Immigration protests have been going on all over the country. Philadelphia is no exception. On March 17th, several immigrant rights organizations joined together to host one of Philadelphia's largest immigration rallies since 2006. The protesters gained the support of several leaders, including a city councilman.
I came to support immigration reform because I'm the results of immigrants. The Irish were starved out of their country in the 1845 to 1850, came here poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, and we were given an opportunity here. We were treated badly when we got here. We were told to go back to where we came from. We didn't speak the language always. We spoke Gaelic instead of English, but we learned and persevered. We're discriminated against in housing and employment. We're called criminals and worse. And I empathize and understand and feel for what these folks are going through here. All they came here for is an opportunity, because where they lived, they couldn't get it, and it wasn't available for them.
On April 10th, thousands of immigrant rights organizations across the country came together to rally and protest for a comprehensive and fair immigration reform in front of the nation's Capitol building. It was one of the largest protests for immigration in 70 years. Today, there are currently over 11 million undocumented citizens living in the United States, and if an immigration law passes, it will give undocumented citizens a path to legalization. Blanca Pacheco is a part of the New Sanctuary Movement, an immigrant activist group in Philadelphia. She has become accustomed to answering to the arguments of anti-immigration reform protesters, and after the DC rally, she replied to two different people's arguments.
We have a lot of illegal children here, and we have to pay for their public education. So that's a burden on our school systems. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland, and the school system there is pretty much broke to some extent because there's so many resources that have to be devoted to students where English is their second language, so they can't do well. We have to hire other teachers to help them. It's a huge drain on the system. There's also there are other costs, medical costs that we have to cover for the poor. These employers who employ illegal immigrants in order to reduce their salary costs, what happens is that the savings that they get, the employers, is now a burden to the taxpayer because these people are being paid so little that they have to go for social services, for food stamps, for medical assistance, legal assistance.
When I heard those comments, I take it as the person who's making that anti-immigrant comments as a person who doesn't know about the facts that much. What happens is like an undocumented person cannot get any benefits from the welfare because for you to get any benefit, you had to have a social security, and the undocumented doesn't have one. And with healthcare, you are not able to get any attention unless you are dying in the hospital. In talking about the education, we have to keep in mind that all these families are working hard and paying taxes. So when they're saying they're draining the education system, they are not seeing the part where these undocumented people get an IRS number to pay taxes and got no benefit from it. So I guess the money they're paying for taxes is fair enough that their kids can have a health education.
All illegals currently in the country need to be deported. All right, it should be done as humanely as possible. If it's not done, we have a joke of a country. We're allowing them in, and they're making a mockery of our laws. It's unfair to the people who have been patiently waiting online to enter legally. Right? I don't buy the argument that we've heard all day about weren't your grandparents immigrants? My grandparents came here legally.
We had to know the story about that a long time ago. United States had a better immigration system. So he got lucky that his ancestors got to come to the right way. And for the immigration right now, we have to understand that people don't choose to come just because it's fun to come. They choose to come because they're like fleeing from poverty, fleeing from violence, and they're coming because they are poor. But people who are poor, they cannot get a legal way to come because for you to be able to come legally, you have to have property, you have to have a bank account, you have to have resources for you to get a visa.
Temple Law professor Jaya Ramji Nogales spoke about the legality of undocumented immigrants.
I think it's just important for people to remember that people who are undocumented immigrants are not committing a crime. Actually, they're breaking a civil immigration law. And just to think about the fact that laws are just something that are made by Congress, right? They're not necessarily grounded in morality. If we think back to the civil rights era, we can think about all kinds of laws that were dramatically unfair, and clearly the immigration law isn't working. So I think it would be helpful for people to think about undocumented immigrants as people who come over here to feed their families, to give their children a brighter future, as many lawful immigrants did. And usually the biggest difference is that lawful immigrants come from higher socioeconomic backgrounds and have more opportunity, whereas undocumented migrants don't have that opportunity, but most of them are just seeking the same things for their families. And so I think that's what people should think about, that in the conversation, that these are people that we're talking about. And I think we should be very worried. One of the quotes that I talked about in the talk the other day was one from Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa. When he learned about the Arizona law, he said, this is how apartheid started. It didn't start as this great system. It started with these small degradations of human dignity, and as you add one on top of the other, all of a sudden you have a system that looks like apartheid. And we should be very mindful of that we are treating people in a humane way and making a system that treats people humanely, rather than scapegoating people or treating them as somehow less than human.
For Broadcast News Documentary, I'm Wafat Diaz.